the East Clay Bay sale of the tornado salvage here at the Land Between the Lakes. And so what I've got on this several map overlays here. So what we've got is it's just sort of a geo map here. And then I've overlain the Clay Bay, the eastern half of the Clay Bay project area. And then along that, I also have these green splotches, and that represents the core areas as designated in the Land Between the Lakes Management Plan, which says that those areas are meant to act as ecological baselines or controls. And so this is where natural processes, including things like storms and tornadoes and wind throws and gap regeneration and all that goes on. And so thus they're meant to be left alone. So we got a lot of stuff to unpack here. And I've got these lines representing the paths of 2 drone flights to help us get a better visual sense of what's going on and what needs to be done. So in the first video, we're starting near that St. Stephen's Church, and here's Road 415. And so we're running along here, and we can see this western corridor of the project area is fine. So the damage, quote, was minimal. And notice that it's just a few trees have fallen, and that's normal because as forest ecology tells us and the land management plan tells us is that as forests mature, they come out of the stem exclusion phase and start natural canopy gaps open up through all kinds of things that send trees down to the ground, and that's okay, and that's normal. There's nothing emergency there. So that whole corridor, there's absolutely no reason for corridors like this that have plenty of trees left over should be fooled with at all. As we start pivoting to the north and then the northeast around, we're going into the main flight path. We come into several other topics that we want to address here. One thing is that as we swing this way, we're coming into the core area, and so some of this core area is going to have places like this that did not get a lot of trees going down or damage, and some areas, like it or not, that did. And you know what? That's okay, because as we discussed in meetings with the Forest Service years ago, tornadoes are a big forest regeneration driver in this region. Much in the same way as in some parts of the West. It is what it is. And core areas meant to be managed with this sort of natural conditions, well, they're going to have stuff like this happen as it's happened for millennia. And as we swing into the main storm pathway of the North Tornado, we've got other issues. We've got here, which is this, we have an intermittent wash where we shouldn't be having mechanical equipment going at all. We also are addressing that, there's still a lot of trees here. They shouldn't be fooled with at all. And in fact, there's a provision in the management plan that actually says snags and den trees will not be felled unless necessary for employer visitor safety. That's not an issue here. We don't have insect disease infestations, and that in timber salvage cases, a management of 6 snags per acre must be retained, and retained snags may be clumped in salvage areas, and den trees are defined as being a minimum of 10 inches DBH and having a cavity. So we have snags. There's plenty of snags here, and some of these may indeed qualify as den trees. But the point is that no matter where we are in the timber salvage, we need to make sure that part of the management plan is being fulfilled, because we are long past the actual danger and public safety, and we don't have massive insect infestations happening. So that needs to be kept in place, along with acknowledging the fact that we're now flying through the path of a core area, and that this ecological change is what it is, and management plan calls for that. Look at that wet little marsh there. That kind of represents this. Leave all that alone. So many factors that tell us that this area, this back end just needs to be left alone here. Also, what's that over here in the horizon here? Oh my gosh, that's loblolly pine, I think. Well, probably loblolly. And as we know, those were planted by TVA in the 50s and 60s. They aren't really native to this area, which is one of the many things we need to think about as we discuss why the agency needs to have an environmental analysis for this 7,000, 8,000, whatever acre area, as they say, well, they want to burn it. Well, there needs to be analysis and a justification for that. Are they going to be working about invasives control? Is that there needs to be analysis for that? Uh, what about accounting for the snags and for the core areas and any archaeological sites and so many other things? Any project this size deserves to have an environmental analysis at minimum. This is big enough, a deal enough for an EIS. So let's take a look over here at one more video. And this is the flight path here, where we're facing out here. Notice how all that area that's pointing at over here is it's pivoting this way. That's fine. All that stuff, that needs to be left alone. All that part of that project area needs to be left alone. No skidders, no nothing, no pulling trees. Look at that. That's perfectly fine. And as we move in to here, once again, we're hitting a core area again as we move into this. So this whole area, this back end of the Clay Bay project area, probably just, is a mixture of core area, low-lying marshy areas, and then areas that did not receive much damage. They're in the interior. They're not near roads. They're not a public safety issue. There's many factors telling us that this back here really needs to be thought out. We've got a lot of things to consider. Is the agency considering them? They need to. We've got a mixture of mandates and ecological good sense that tells us that we need to be not just rushing in and pulling timber willy-nilly all over the place. As we can see up here, which represents this area on the west end, they've already done a lot of work. But this whole back end running here, it has not really had anything happen. And before it does, the issues that we have outlined really need to be taken into account. And we hope that the agency does take them into account.